Still on the war, Israel's plans for military operations in the southern Gaza city of Rafah is not still going down well with U.S. officials, who are again raising concerns about the decision. The White House says representatives of the Israeli Prime Minister had agreed to pay attention to the concern. The U.S. has repeatedly urged Israel not to launch a major offensive in Rafah to avoid more civilian casualties in Gaza. On the flip side, the Israeli military says it has struck dozens of targets in Gaza just a day after widespread Israeli bombing of the central part of the Strip, as well as Gaza City in the north. Well, joining us for more on this is Dr. Reuben, who is a policy analyst. Thank you for joining us on World Now. Well, it does appear that Israel has acted after it said Iran's weekend attack would not go unanswered. But there have been competing claims about the scale of the strike. How do you describe what has happened?
Well, thank you for having me. Clearly, at this time, this situation is still a bit unclear. Israel hasn't actually released a statement on the situation, but clearly, a U.S. official has confirmed that Israel surely did attack. And of course, this is coming on the heels of the barrage of attack they received over the weekend from Iran. But what we can see, is that this seems to be an attempt to send a message, because there are clearly other places that Israel could have, launched this attack on if they wanted to. But you see that the attack seems to have been circumscribed and limited, to kind of convey a message, really, that if you attack us, we have the capacity to attack, right? But this is a warning. This is a kind of sending a message to you not to provoke us. Okay, so that's what I see more, because by targeting that province where there is significant nuclear facility, it's a signal and a message that Israel seems to be sending. That's what we can see at this moment. That message we get overall.
All right, and there have been growing calls for de-escalation. How effective do you think these calls will be in preventing a rise in tension in the Middle East?
For me, even the very attack seems to suggest that the call for de-escalation is probably working, because Israel wanted to attack. The United States didn't expose their attack, and some of their other allies. But what they have done could have been much more serious, perhaps if there was support from the U.S. government and their other allies, right? So we see that this kind of suggests that the escalation might actually work, which is what every one of us wants, because the region is already on a very edge, and we can't afford to have this matter spill out of control. It's already out of control, by the way. So to have another full-fledged war with Iran it will destabilize the region, and you're talking about a lot of things, and that all has to go if this matter gets out of hand. So I think the call for de-escalation, this suggests to me that it might just be working, and we just hope that it continues and that there is no retaliatory attack again by Iran. Because come to think of it, there is a reason for Iran not to attack. This is not a major thing. There is no significant, damage done, right? So it's more like a message that we can do this, but we hope that both Israel and Iran can take the escalation very seriously to just douse the tension in the region.
Well, how do you see events play out in the days ahead regarding this conflict? Because, of course, Iran could just tell you, okay, you've struck again, and I have to do something about it.
Well, these are the issues, but it's not as simple as it seems, because there are other interests in this situation. You have the United States interested, you have the United Kingdom, and you have Russia interested. So this is not just a decision you make because you have the capacity to attack. So I think there's going to be lots of conversation. I think that both countries are going to be looking at the consequences, beyond the cost of doing that, but the cost of also relationships. So I think there's going to be a lot of conversation, a lot of call from international community on both countries to take the part of de-escalation. So I don't see this resulting into a war, another war in the region, all right? Because there are lots of it, and I just hope that it translates to something, translates to peace and de-escalation in the region.
All right, then. We know that already the EU and US have agreed to tighten sanctions on Iran. Do you see that weaken Tehran's missile program?
Yes, I do. I do, because if there is already a lot of sanctions on Iran, really, and those sanctions doesn't help the economy, really. And when the sanctions are effectively implemented, it can have a very serious consequence on Iran. So I think with the EU and the US stepping up sanctions against Iran, that could be a serious deterrent factor, all right? Because I do not think that Iran wants a full-fledged war with Israel at this time. So perhaps with all of these considerations, including the sanctions we just talked about, we might begin to see some kind of restraint on the part of both countries.
Right.
And you also remember that a war in the region, may not be very good for the re-election of President Joe Biden. You are talking about the Muslim community as well, who are very, there are a lot of issues around this that can be very sensitive. So I think that there's going to be a lot of efforts to ensure that this matter doesn't get out of hand.
All right, then. Policy analyst Dr. Reuben, thank you very much for talking to us on World Now.